welcome to I-24 News Sports Weekend Edition with some of the best stories we had in our magazine this past week. We begin with a look at football unions and federations that used to be the big forces in European sports politics, handling teams and players. Lately, with the introduction of big money and foreign team ownership, these federations look to be old and outdated. Are they about to disappear, or do they still have a role? Lise Barenboim tries to answer.
At a time when private companies are buying sports clubs with big money, sports federations seem irrelevant by the day. Sports federations are associations which oversee regional clubs or leagues. Since 1945, France has given its federations several favors, like organizing competitions, establishing its national teams, and training coaches and referees as well. However, the federations also have to implement the government's guidelines and to promote France's image, a mission that the Football Federation undertakes with the French national team.
I told them about the jersey, the national identity, something that avoids us a bit.
Sports federations are often stagnant institutions, having presidents who stay too long in office. Each president is elected for 4 years and can perform an unlimited number of terms. These people often end their careers in sports federations, and their mission is nothing more than volunteering. Some presidents who don't always have the adequate profile find themselves in compromising positions. One example is Jean-Pierre Escalette, who was forced to resign from the French Football Federation chairmanship in 2010. He was considered outdated as he did not speak the same language as the young players of the French national team.
I am bitter to succeed my friend Jean-Pierre Escalette in one of the darkest periods of French football. I am fully aware of the need for reform on the following 4 topics. First, our statutes. Secondly, our ability to manage. Third, our ability to work as a team. And fourth, the way we communicate.
Budget is also a matter of concern. The federations are financed by 3 sources. 50% of the budget comes from the licenses contributions. Sponsors and local communities give between 15 and 30% of the budget. The state itself adds 25%, and the rest is completed by television rights. In 2012, Valérie Fourniron, the French Minister of Youth and Sports, announced a 6% decrease in subsidies to sports federations, an announcement considered as a blow to these organizations. While some sports are able to pay for themselves thanks to television rights, many others can't. The Swimming Federation barely receives those rights because its infrastructures can't accommodate large events for broadcasting. However, funding can also come from dubious sources, which was the case of the French Handball Federation in 2012.
Since its inception, the Federation is based sufficiently on solid values, and I tell you with the greatest determination that we will overcome this difficulty.
Gender is also a problem in the sports federations. Since October 2013, the quota of women in federations is no longer required by French law. This is seen as another failure in the modernization of these institutions. It seems like sports federations are a comfortable position for a job, sitting in the spotlight rather than actually taking care of the actual sports.
And joining us now in the studio is David Mutlin, I-24 News presenter. David, thank you for joining us.
Great to be here.
David, you know a lot about American sports, and over in America there's a lot of private ownership, no really such thing as unions and federations. And in America, yes, there's big money, but the model of private ownership is succeeding.
Massively succeeding. I mean, private ownership in U.S. sports over the decades that it's been in place has led to massive growth in terms of popularity of the sports, but revenue has jumped leaps and bounds over recent decades, where the top league like the NFL becoming the most successful entertainment product in America today.
And the one thing we have not seen, or we have not seen a lot in America, but we're seeing in European football, is foreign ownership. Yes, there is the example of Prochorov with the Nets in Brooklyn, but in Europe we're seeing big money coming in from the Gulf states, from Russian oligarchs. Why hasn't this money come to America so far? Is there enough money in America by itself so that foreign investors don't come in?
I think it's less about the money and the fact that you look at the American pro sports leagues, roughly 30 teams. There's not a lot of space for new ownership. A lot of these owners, it's an old boys network beyond anything else in the sports world in America, where a lot of these owners have been in place for decades. It's their sons that take over the teams. There's not a lot of openings.
Yeah, it's sort of a family business.
So it's unlikely to see that. I mean, right now there's rumors of Donald Trump trying to buy the Buffalo Bills in the NFL. That's making big waves. Unlikely to happen. These guys control the network very tightly. They're in charge of the league, more or less, these owners.
Maybe the secret is David Beckham, who's coming in now in Miami. Maybe it's not only money, but he's bringing money and glamour.
Adds a lot of glamour, and I think that's another aspect of the Trump thing people have talked about. Adds glamour, even more glamour to the sport. But right, Beckham has brought the intangibleness of glamour to the sport, which certainly is interesting to a league struggling like the Major League Soccer.
Now, we're saying that there are not many unions and federations in the U.S., but if you ask the college players, for example, they're thinking of making a union themselves because they're saying, we bring a lot of money into the college, and yet we play for free.
It's a hot topic in the United States right now, for sure, and really has been for years. The NCAA, which regulates all the sports in the schools and college schools, is become basically in charge of a financial empire now. It's the football.
The league is hugely successful. It's even more successful in the NBA at times than in America.
Before NFL football, you're talking NCAA college football in terms of viewership, huge TV deals in the state of Texas. I mean, they got their own networks for these college schools, billions of dollars generated every year. The players get none of that right now in the current system. Only the best players get full ride scholarships to some of these schools. But the players see themselves generating this money, but not receiving any of it.
And let's remember, not everybody will eventually go to the NBA. Not everyone will become millionaires. Very few will do, but not everyone.
No, most do not. And injuries is a big thing too. A lot of these players now at Northwestern University, they've led the charge to try to unionize, try to gain more rights, not necessarily pursuing money, but more protection in the sport, a way to organize and have a voice against the NCAA, which is really a monolithic empire right now, far beyond the bounds probably of what they ever expected in terms of finances. So it's a hot topic right now, absolutely. Controversial.
Obviously, it will be very interesting to see how this happens in America, capitalistic America. Very interesting subject indeed. David Madlin, thank you very much for being with us.
You bet, my pleasure.
Football is many times the only option for street children to succeed in life. This may be the only way for them not to fall to a life of misery and crime. The road to salvation may start in the Street Child World Cup, taking place these days in Brazil. In just 2 months, the biggest stars in the world will arrive to the giant South American country in their quest to becoming the world champions. But for the kids, there is something even more important to achieve, a chance for a better life. Oribam, the report.
They might not be Leo Messi, Cristiano Ronaldo, or Neymar, or practice at state-of-the-art training grounds, but for these kids, this is the real World Cup. The second edition of the Street Child World Cup took off in Rio de Janeiro, assembling disadvantaged youth from 19 countries for a 10-day football tournament.
These are children that are off the radar, children initially without birth certificates, let alone passports, let alone visas. Every child is here. Every child is now officially somebody.
One nation competing in the tournament is Pakistan, which sent a 19-player squad to represent the country for the first time in the event. Many of the young players come from the tough streets of the capital, Karachi, with backgrounds of drugs and criminal lifestyle.
My past life was like a street hoodlum, using drugs, running away from school and studies. I was an addict and kept using drugs. We knew what we were doing and what we should do. I was staying away from home.
Football is a platform of salvation for these children. Many of them fall into gang wars, and the tournament is an opportunity to take them off the streets and re-establish their lives.
Every team has weaknesses, and so does our team. But by the grace of God, we are overcoming these weaknesses and shortcomings. We are working hard in preparing these kids before going to competition.
Pakistan eventually made it to Brazil, walking on the pitch with their nation's flag and representing their country with pride. The opening game of the event was a girls' match between the host Brazil and Indonesia. And although the actual World Cup will start in June, these kids have accomplished one goal, proving that football can make a difference.
Football, as we all know, is a passion, but sometimes coming with a heavy price. For many fans, the football ground is a place where everything is legitimate, often resulting in violence and hooliganism. Where's the line between support and violence? Why is it crossed? And what are security forces around the world trying to do to prevent it? Lise Barnbaum with the answers.
Many times, fans are considered as the 12th player of the team, as their culture is a profound identity for their unwavering support to the club.
I learned to love Botafogo, and to this day, it's been my passion.
Some fans may grow and become a living encyclopedia of their teams, collecting the proper memorabilia.
I started the museum in 1997. It was my dream because I was a fan of Platini from very young.
But fans can also be decision makers. In Spain, the socios hold part ownership of their club and have a major influence on the team's decisions, a privilege that is passed from father to son in places like Barcelona, Madrid, and Bilbao. In France, the only team that gives its supporters a share in management is Saint-Étienne, an established and well-organized club. Unfortunately, violence often casts a dark shadow on football. In 2010, Jan Lorenz was killed by hooligans outside a PSG Marseille match, an act which shook Robin Leproux, former president of the Parisian club, who initially decided to stop the violence.
What the family expressed is that he did not die for nothing. That is to say, that we advance, we take heavy, new, effective decisions at PSG in order to reduce violence near the Parc des Princes.
The most passionate fans, the ultras, are usually ejected out of the stadium as they are blacklisted and banned from entering matches. Football clubs wish to change the profile of the public to avoid further tragedies, and now football fans have become consumers, changing the atmosphere of the game.
The services of the police and PSG club leaders managed to eradicate violence in the Parc des Princes and to ensure that the atmosphere at the stadium will once again become family-friendly.
The enthusiasm of PSG fans can often go borderline. In 2001, Parisian hooligans came to beat Turkish people during a game against Galatasaray. That was the same in 2006 when a police officer was killed for protecting a young Jewish man after a match between PSG and Hapoel Tel Aviv. In 2013, the Parisian fans ransacked the Trocadero after winning the French championship.
After 22 years, this is the first time I've seen such events and such hooliganism. And indeed, this is the first time in my life I've seen such violence.
A legal arsenal was deployed to punish troublemakers. The 1993 Aliot Marie Act and the 2005 Sarkozy Act provided stadium bans and dissolving of the most extreme fan groups. In England, the restrictions for football hooligans are harsh, from fining repeat offenders and even judging them during matches. But not all football fans are violent thugs, as most of them simply come for the love of the game.
And with us in the studio is Danny Swaiba, I-24 News reporter. Hi, Danny.
How you doing today, John?
Fine, thank you. Thank you for being with us. Danny, we're seeing all these examples from Europe, and let's take the example you know very well from America. The United States, America is a very, very violent society, and yet in sports, the place where everything apparently should go out, it doesn't happen. We see violence in American sports by the fans, not so much as in Europe. How come?
I mean, yes, it definitely does happen in American sports, but the thing is, I think it has something to do with the fact that American sports aren't as politicized maybe as European sports like football or in South America. It's not divided by, there's not elements of class and race perhaps in the sport.
Religion, which is even worse.
Definitely. So the thing is, we do still see in the United States our series of sports. There's a really good example, the San Francisco 49ers on one end of the bridge, and on the other end of the bridge you have the Oakland Raiders. So that ends up being a bit of a clash, and there was recently a stabbing. I believe last year there was a stabbing outside the Oakland Stadium, and that has to do a little bit with class. A lot of the Raiders fans feel that they don't live as good of a life perhaps as the people on the San Francisco side of the bridge.
Now, when tourists from Europe or South America, sports fans, when they go to NBA, for example, they say, well, the whole atmosphere is too sterile. It's too quiet for them. Say that there's not that much emotion. Maybe that is the price you have to pay to make this a family affair if you want to take your kids and not to be afraid for their safety.
I don't think it has to necessarily be all or nothing. I mean, I think there is a lot of energy in NBA stadiums, but again, it is about the love of the game, and it should be a family event. And right now, they're starting to take measures to kind of limit the alcohol drinking during the games, starting to limit the amount of time you can drink, stopping it maybe before the fourth quarter comes, so people don't go outside of the stadiums and create havoc and violence. And it's because it's really about the sport. It's not about all that other stuff.
Now, one other thing, even if you're not a violent fan, in Europe, the football pitch is sometimes seen as a place where you can say everything. In America, you can't. There are very strict things that even the fans can't say. Maybe that's the solution. There are certain words you not say. Maybe that should be introduced in Europe.
Perhaps. Well, listen, American sports, we do get away with a lot outside the stadiums. There's a lot of drunks out there. They're creating a lot of havoc. Maybe that's something to do with the fact that the U.S. is a lawsuit society. So if there should be violence on the grounds.
That's the idea. You say something wrong and I will sue you.
And if something bad happens, the stadium or the team will perhaps get sued. So, the security is out. They're making sure that people are safe. And, I think it's an important part of these games because it is, about family and fun.
It is about family and fun. And one just quick note before we finish. Even in college sports where there's a lot of emotion, still things seem to be quiet. I'll say quieter compared with Europe, certainly South America, and it's very interesting to see.
I think so. I think alcohol is a big part of it. You got a bunch of guys together, women too, but a bunch of guys together, testosterone, a lot of booze. Sometimes it gets out of hand, and hopefully not so much.
Denny Zweibel, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that's it for this weekend edition. Thank you for watching. Don't forget you can watch this and every other edition on our website at i24news.tv. We're also on Facebook and on Twitter. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Bye-bye.